Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we're just going to be running through some of the key injuries that currently remain across the NFL, some of the ones that were, suffered an injury this past week, where Jordan Love is progressing in his return. And that's where we are going to start, is with Jordan Love, who is, returning to practice, but is still very much limited in the drills that he is running, and he's been a limited participation, and that Jordan Love himself said that he is probably a little bit less limited than he was last week, but I don't know. It sounds like the Packers are trying to shape this up to be that he could be available for them this upcoming week. I'm definitely more skeptical on that front, and truthfully, I think part of the reason for that is based off of the Packers going 2-0 so far off of his absence, that have been able to hang in there coming into a week playing the Minnesota Vikings at home. We've seen what the Vikings have been able to do in terms of generating pressure and, getting into the backfield. I just don't know if this is necessarily going to be the week that the Packers sort of press that button to bring him back. I personally think they're going to take more time with this, and that, again, especially looking across the NFL right now, it's not like anybody is sort of taking the league by storm. Maybe the Vikings are one of those teams, and maybe they feel like they have to have some sort of situation here where maybe they want to try and slow the Vikings' momentum, but ultimately, I think they're going to play this thing cautious. I don't think he's going to play for them, but again, that's purely my speculation there. I feel a lot more confident in saying that I think that Justin Herbert is very likely to be out this weekend. Now, all of the word around it is that he is progressing through that ankle injury, that they are hoping that he could potentially play this upcoming week, but that was sort of a lot of the same storylines we were hearing last week, and obviously Herbert ends up getting knocked out of that game in the third quarter this past weekend against the Steelers. Now, Steelers, obviously, also a very talented defense. That's not an easy one to sort of go out there haphazardly and try and, take it to them. But I think the biggest factor is sort of outside of that quarterback position, the fact that the Chargers are expected to be without both of their offensive tackles this upcoming week, where their left tackle in Rashawn Slater, he strained a pec during that game against the Steelers, and Joe Alt, their star rookie right tackle, has an MCL sprain and is expected to be out for a few weeks. So this is a situation. They're coming into this game against the Chiefs. I'm sure that Jim Harbaugh would love to make a statement to the Chiefs that this is sort of a new era and that the Chargers are going to be a more competitive team moving forward. But again, I am just very skeptical on whether or not they're going to throw Justin Herbert, already gimpy himself to some degrees, and put him behind a couple of offensive tackles that are backups for them. So I would be, again, pretty confident in the idea that Herbert is going to be unable to play. Now, talking about some of the other, star wide receiver or star skill position players, I should say, in the NFL is Keenan Allen, who is at a point where he has been out for these past couple weeks. He is dealing with an injury in his own right. Now, he was able to return to practice just yesterday on Wednesday, a limited participant in that game. He hasn't been cleared yet for this upcoming weekend against the Rams, but it sounds like he is on track to return this week, which would be huge for the Bears offense that has been really lackluster these past few, or really up to this point in the season as a whole. And Keenan Allen is a difference maker. Now, is he? I mean, it's hard to say he's not necessarily the star he once was, because 2023, statistically speaking, was Keenan's best season of his career up to this point. So I think that he can still, make a real difference on this Bears offense, and that he will once he returns. But, I think that it also does stem a little bit deeper than the wide receiver position. They already have talent with DJ Moore and with Rome Odunze. Cole Kmet is a fine tight end as well. But, that offensive line is obviously more so the concern. But all of that being said, Caleb Williams would very much benefit from having Keenan Allen back, and it sounds like that is going to be the case. And then we have a couple other concussion news on Austin Eckler, who is out this week because of the concussion that he suffered about halfway through the game against Cincinnati this past weekend. Sounds like Trey McBride, the Cardinals tight end, is also in concussion protocol. Now, from what I've seen on the McBride front, I think it sounds like he might be available to play this upcoming weekend. Now, I can, do a little bit of double checking there, but at least as of late Tuesday, he was still on that concussion protocol. So I would not be necessarily banking on that at this point. Cardinals, definitely a banged up team right now. Something to consider headed into this weekend, looking at the perspective of, whether or not you were hoping to bet on the Cardinals in what should be a pretty winnable game at home against the Commanders, or from a fantasy football perspective as well. Marvin Harrison Jr. as well was limited with an injury earlier this week, so those are definitely things to take into consideration. But I do want to look a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball to sort of close this one out as well, because we got some more definitive injuries on that side that we know there are going to be some players that are, that are going to be out for some time. The Detroit Lions definitely banged up from this past week against the Cardinals. Edge rusher Marcus Davenport, who they just brought in, he is going to be out for the season with an elbow injury. Tough blow there, especially because the Lions, I do feel like defensively, are maybe a little bit more reliant on their front seven in terms of producing results, that their secondary can be a little bit more vulnerable at times. So losing Davenport for the year really hurts for them. Also, I know we're talking defense, but center Frank Ragnow also tore his pec this past weekend. So it sounds like Dan Campbell thinks there could be a chance that Ragnow does return at some point. But you talk about the Lions, their number one strength of their roster as a whole probably is that offensive line, and losing the leader there is a big blow to them. Very quickly as well, sticking with offensive line, Eric McCoy, the center for the New Orleans Saints, he is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks now, which is a tough loss for them, because this is what we talked about heading into this week, is that they are an offense that's pretty reliant on the run game and in-play action, and losing him definitely has an impact on both of those, sort of in a ripple effect situation. So that is also some very unfortunate news there. And then really the last couple ones I have here are more so on the defensive side of the ball. Javon Hargrave, defensive tackle for the San Francisco 49ers. He is going to be out for the regular season with a torn pec. Now, it sounds like there's a possibility that he could return for the playoffs, so maybe we're anticipating him and Frank Ragnow to be on somewhat of a similar timeline, something to take into consideration there. Two teams that could very well be facing off against one another once the playoffs do come around. And then you have some of the, more bottom teams at this point, with the Las Vegas Raiders. Safety Marcus Epps is out for the season with a torn ACL. So a very tough blow there for a Raiders team that is hoping to sort of, continue to surprise people on a week-to-week basis. They're capable of winning a lot of football, or they're capable of winning any football game, I should say. Ultimately, though, I don't think that they have playoff aspirations necessarily on their mind. I mentioned this earlier in the show. Foyesade Oluokun, the star linebacker for the Jacksonville Jaguars, as their season just continues to spiral. He is expected to miss several weeks with a foot injury, the same foot injury that Justin Herbert was dealing with in training camp. So that is going to be, maybe just another statement on how in trouble the Jaguars are for this upcoming season. And, I think that ultimately here we saw a very, very tough slate of injuries this past weekend in the NFL, as we usually do. Week 1, it was with a lot of sort of more skill position players. This week the defense got hit hard. But that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you may be keeping up with us. To any of our live viewers, be sure to use the comment section to give us your thoughts on the latest happenings in sports. Be sure to check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content. And we will be back tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. We will see you then. Take care. Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.